Okay, picture this. AI, artificial intelligence. It's this amazing, like, transformative force. It's poised to completely change, well, everything. We're talking AI spotting diseases faster than doctors, new physics discoveries, maybe, even just better assistance on our phones. The promise is huge, almost, limitless. But then imagine all that potential just slams into a wall. Not because the tech isn't there or we lack smart people. No, it's a physical wall, a hardware wall. Okay, let's unpack this. Today, we are diving deep into what our sources are calling the geopolitical chip war of 2025. And look, this isn't some abstract thing happening far away. It's having real, like, immediate effects right now, right in the heart of the AI industry. So, our mission here in this deep dive is basically to pull out the key nuggets of info from the sources we've looked at, especially this big report, AI Choked, the geopolitical chip war of 2025. We want to give you the shortcut, get you up to speed on this really critical, complicated thing that's changing fast. You're going to hear some pretty surprising facts, I think. We'll try to explain it clearly, give you the context so you understand why this whole situation actually matters to you.
Yeah, and what's fascinating here is how things that seem totally separate, decisions in tech company boardrooms, and then these big moves on the global geopolitical stage, they're not just connected. They're completely like tangled up together. This isn't just another trade spat. It really shows how deeply intertwined the global tech supply chain is now,
Yeah.
and how policy choices made way up high can directly, almost instantly affect how fast technology moves forward, affect, well, maybe even the future path of human progress. We're going to connect those dots for you. Silicon, rare earths, politics, it's all part of the same dance.
Right. So let's start with the most immediate problem, the one that's hitting the AI industry right now. It's the severe, really critical shortage of GPUs, graphics processing units. And these aren't just for making video games look good anymore, are they?
Oh, absolutely not. They're the absolute lifeblood, the workhorses of modern AI.
Yeah.
They do this parallel processing, crunching these massive, massive data sets needed to train and run the big AI models. Without enough of them, the smartest algorithms are basically just, well, code sitting on a server.
Yeah.
Useless.
And the situation sounds pretty bad.
It is. It's dire, actually.
Take OpenAI. I mean, everyone knows OpenAI, right? At the cutting edge. Their CEO, Sam Altman, he's openly admitted they're facing these huge constraints. He basically said his company is completely out of GPUs.
Yeah, just think about that. OpenAI, this isn't some tiny startup, right?
No.
They are a giant in AI development, and they are literally out of the most basic thing they need to run at full steam, let alone grow.
It just creates this weird situation, doesn't it? Like a paradox. OpenAI has the tech ready. They've got advanced models, maybe GPT-5, other new services, all ready to go. But because of these capacity problems, they have to delay things, hold back features, maybe even restrict access for people already using their stuff.
They're stuck.
Yeah, stuck. Not because they aren't smart enough, but because of physical limits. And the demand side, I mean, look at ChatGPT. It's been breaking user records all through 2025, right? It's just explosive
Oh,
growth.
it's unprecedented.
And all that usage directly means you need more and more computing power. It's this insatiable demand. Can you imagine? You have the tech to change the world, but you're just waiting for the actual bricks to build it.
It's incredibly frustrating. A massive bottleneck for, one of the most exciting fields out there.
So frustrating for OpenAI, sure. But what are the broader effects?
Well, if we connect this to the bigger picture, this isn't just about one company struggling to launch its next big thing. It's really about the pace of innovation, for all of us. These capacity issues, they're not expected to just vanish overnight. Our sources are saying they could last for months. And that has really profound long-term implications.
How so?
Well, when AI progress gets stalled because there isn't enough hardware, it's not just delaying a new chatbot feature. Think about medicine. AI could analyze huge amounts of genetic data, right? Speed up personalized treatments, or simulate how drugs interact to find new therapies faster.
Right, life-saving stuff.
Exactly. Every delay in getting GPUs means a delay in those kinds of advancements. Real delays impacting real lives. And it's the same in basic science like physics. You need these GPUs for complex simulations, understanding particles, how the universe works, or across all kinds of scientific research and industry, really. AI has the potential to unlock literally trillions in economic value.
Trillions, wow.
Yeah, think about autonomous systems and logistics, AI finding new materials, smarter energy grids. All of that relies on having enough computing power and having it be scalable.
So the hardware bottleneck basically stops the software ideas from becoming reality.
Precisely. It prevents the realization of software advances, prevents scaling up the models. Companies can pour money into R&D, build amazing AI, hire the best people.
Hmm.
But if they don't have the underlying compute, the GPUs, the data centers, the power,
It just sits there.
it just sits there.
Yeah.
The advancements can't be scaled. They can't be deployed widely. It's like having blueprints for an amazing new city, but you don't have any steel or
Yeah,
concrete.
you can't actually build it.
Exactly. The potential is just untapped.
Right.
The economic benefits, the societal benefits, they get pushed back indefinitely. AI's promise, what should we talk about in terms of like intelligence, right now is completely tied to the physical supply chain for a few key parts.
Yeah.
And that makes the whole geopolitical angle incredibly potent.
That's a really powerful analogy. Yeah, physical limits holding back these huge intellectual leaps. So that bottleneck at OpenAI, the question is, how did we end up here? Because our sources say the story really ramps up when you look at the policy decisions. Here's where it gets really interesting. So the start of this whole supply disruption, the sources trace it back to an escalation early in 2025. It wasn't totally out of nowhere. It was more like turning up the heat on existing policies.
Like building on what was already there.
Exactly. Specifically, President Trump intensified the restrictions from 2022. Those were already limiting exports of advanced Nvidia chips to China. We're talking the really high-end ones like the A100s, the H100.
And one's absolutely essential for serious AI work.
Right. The 2022 rules were meant to slow China down in things like supercomputing, maybe military tech. But the 2025 actions, they really widened the scope and upped the ante significantly.
How so? What do they actually do?
Well, the measures were pretty severe. New tariffs, for one, hitting as high as, get this, 145% on these critical chips.
145%?
Yeah.
Wow.
I mean, that basically makes them impossible to buy, right? Prohibitively expensive. And it wasn't just the chips themselves. The bans got broader. They included chip design software, related tech. So China couldn't even easily get the tools to design its own advanced chips, let alone import the best ones.
So cutting them off at the source and blocking the tools.
Pretty much. The stated goal, according to the sources, was clear. Curb China's tech progress, especially in AI and advanced computing. These are seen as key for future economic power, military power, you know the drill. It was a very deliberate, aggressive move. Some are calling it economic warfare, basically using America's tech lead to slow down a competitor.
Yes, the strategic thinking behind it, the intent, was definitely to slow China down in those key tech areas, especially AI, which has obvious dual-use military and economic implications.
Right.
The idea was limit their access to the absolute cutting-edge computing power, the kind you need for the most advanced AI. That would theoretically protect U.S. security and keep the U.S. ahead technologically. Our sources suggest the U.S. administration probably thought its leverage, in chip manufacturing design software was so strong that China wouldn't really have an effective way to hit back. Or maybe that hitting back would be too costly for Beijing.
But that's not what happened, is it?
No.
Yeah.
What happened almost immediately, and maybe this wasn't fully intended, was it sparked a fierce retaliation from China.
Ah.
And this really highlights the whole concept of economic warfare. It often escalates, right? It follows predictable patterns. You weaponize a globalized supply chain, something that depends on everyone working together. Well, the effects rarely stay neatly contained.
Yeah, ripples spread out.
Exactly. The assumption might have been, we cut off their supply, we hurt them, end of story. But what often happens is the country being targeted looks for its own leverage points, its own strategic assets, often in areas where it has significant control, maybe even a monopoly.
Okay, so the initial U.S. move, despite the clear goal, maybe didn't fully account for how interconnected everything is in tech.
That seems to be the analysis.
Yeah.
It might have been miscalculated, yeah. How deep and complex those connections run. Instead of a one-way street, it kicked off this tit-for-tat dynamic that ends up hurting, well, both sides. And as we're seeing the entire global AI industry, it created a much messier, much more expensive situation than maybe anyone planned for.
And that tit-for-tat, that retaliation from China, it came pretty fast.
Very fast and very direct. A calculated counterpunch.
What did they do?
In April, they hit back by halting exports of key rare earth elements.
Ah, rare earths. I've heard about those. They're important, right?
Crucial. These aren't just, random metals. There are 17 specific chemical elements, and they're vital for tons of high-tech stuff. But critically, they're absolutely essential for making GPUs.
Really? How?
Well, they're used in polishing the silicon wafers, the base of the chip. They're in magnets for special cooling systems inside the GPUs, in advanced alloys that make sure the chips perform well and last long under stress. They're basically the chemical foundation for the very chips AI needs.
Okay, so essential ingredients. And China's role here is
This is the kicker. China has incredible leverage. Our sources say they control over 90% of global supply of these critical elements.
90%.
Over 90%, yeah. And this isn't an accident. It comes from decades of them strategically investing in mining, processing, refining, plus maybe less strict environmental rules than in many Western countries help them dominate the market.
So they have a near monopoly on something vital for everything from phones to EVs to AI servers.
Exactly. So when China turned off the tap for these exports, it wasn't just symbolic. It was a direct hit to the global electronic supply chain. It sent shockwaves through every industry that relies on advanced components. A very serious strategic countermove designed to hurt the U.S. where it was most vulnerable.
Wow. Okay, so what was the immediate effect here in the U.S.?
The impact on U.S. manufacturing was pretty severe, pretty fast. When China stopped exporting these essential rare earths, the manufacturing lines that need them for GPUs literally ground to a halt in some cases.
Halt. Yeah.
Our sources figure these export halts added another 20 to 35% to the existing U.S. GPU shortage. So it wasn't just some abstract number on a report, it was a real physical hit to production. Factories potentially sitting idle, product launches delayed. For a lot of manufacturers, suddenly not having these materials meant they just couldn't finish making their products.
And prices?
Shot up dramatically.
Yeah.
Component prices surged up to 50% in some sectors.
50%. Ouch.
Yeah. And this raises an important question, right, about how vulnerable we are when we depend so heavily on a single source for critical stuff.
Definitely.
When one country controls that much of a vital resource, it creates what's called a strategic choke point, like one valve controlling a whole city's water. If they turn it off, industries can just seize up.
Right.
And this wasn't like a tariff on a finished product where maybe you could shift production somewhere else eventually. This was a hit on the raw materials needed for production. It caused this cascade effect, impacted the whole manufacturing process, stretched out lead times, and massively inflated costs everywhere. It just shows how fragile these complex global supply chains are when, geopolitics heats up. Companies were left scrambling for alternatives, but frankly, alternatives at that scale often just don't exist.
Okay, so we had this intense back and forth. The U.S. tightens chip restrictions. China hits back with rare earths. Then things cooled off a bit. You mentioned partial deals by mid-year.
That's right. There was some movement. Partial deals were struck. They allowed a limited resumption of Nvidia selling its H20 chips to China. These are slightly less powerful AI chips, sort of a step down from the absolute top tier. And in return, some rare earth shipments to the U.S. were allowed again.
Okay, so like a temporary truce. A breather.
It might have felt like that, yeah.
Oh.
Bit of a ceasefire after the initial shock.
So what does this all mean then? Are things getting better? Are we out of the woods? Or is this just like the eye of the storm?
Unfortunately, no, not really out of the woods. While those deals gave some temporary relief, allowed some companies to breathe a little. The expert consensus, based on our sources, is that the full ripple effects of all these disruptions, they're actually not expected to hit their peak until November.
November, so the worst is still coming.
That's the projection. Despite the temporary deals, the accumulated impact, the consequences of those initial shocks working their way through the system, that's expected to peak later this year.
Why November specifically?
Well, there are a few reasons, and they're pretty concerning. Key tariff truces, the temporary agreements that lowered some tariffs, they're set to expire around then. So those tariffs could snap back to the really high prohibitive levels. Plus there's potential for new quotas to be introduced on both sides. That could limit the volume of trade, even if tariffs stay lower, which would obviously make shortages worse again.
So more cost increases coming.
That's the forecast. This looming November deadline is expected to drive up costs for AI infrastructure by another 15 to 25%.
On top of the earlier increases.
Exactly. On top of the already big jumps earlier in the year. Imagine, your costs for vital parts jumping by another quarter, maybe more, in just a few months.
That's huge.
It is. And it's not just the direct cost of the parts. Companies are being forced to completely reroute their supply chains. That's a massive undertaking, logistically. Finding new suppliers, checking new materials, renegotiating contracts, sometimes building new production lines or even whole factories somewhere else.
That sounds expensive.
It comes at an additional expense of billions. Billions of dollars diverted from R&D, from innovation, into just trying to keep the lights on, operationally speaking.
So these partial deals weren't really solutions.
The analysis suggests they're more like temporary ceasefires, maybe strategic pauses for both sides to kind of reassess and regroup. The underlying problems, the geopolitical tension, the supply chain weaknesses, the push for countries to be technologically self-sufficient, none of that has gone away.
Right.
So the true cost, financially and operationally, of this whole chip war is still adding up. And the unpredictability it creates, that's massive risk for any tech company trying to plan ahead. It makes long-term strategy almost impossible. You have this environment where things seem stable for a bit, then suddenly plunge back into chaos. Companies have to be constantly agile, constantly reacting, and that's incredibly costly.
Right. So clearly, OpenAI isn't alone in this. This isn't just one company's GPU problem. It's hitting everyone. This whole crisis of compute is affecting the entire AI industry, far beyond just, the famous startups. You've got the huge players, right? Meta, Google, Microsoft, the giants that kind of define our digital lives. They're facing the same problems, grappling with the same supply chain issues, the same capacity limits. Their big AI plans are feeling the pinch too.
Yeah, even the biggest names are struggling.
And think about the kind of money these companies have. They are pouring astronomical sums into AI. Our sources say their combined spending on AI tech and data centers. It's projected to be over $300 billion in 2025 alone.
300 billion. It's hard to even comprehend that number.
Exactly. You'd think with that kind of cash, they could just buy up every GPU on the planet, right? That money would solve any supply problem.
You would think so.
But the reality is, even spending that much, they are still falling short of the explosive compute demand.
The demand is just outpacing
It's
everything.
incredible. The numbers show compute demand growing at rates of 100% year over year in some areas.
Doubling every year.
Doubling. Every single year. It creates this exponential need for processing power that the supply chain, as it is now, just cannot meet. It's like this bottomless appetite for compute, and there's just not enough food no matter how much money you throw at it. This isn't just a bottleneck. It's like a widespread earthquake shaking the whole tech landscape.
And that earthquake has very real, very painful financial consequences, especially for investors. They've been left reeling, as one source put it.
How bad has it been?
Well, to give you an idea, Nvidia, which is kind of the poster child for the chip industry and benefited hugely from the AI boom, initially our sources say they had a staggering $600 billion market cap plunge in a single day earlier this year.
600 billion in one day.
Yeah. It's almost unimaginable. That much value just vanishing overnight, like the entire economy of a decent-sized country disappearing. It wasn't just a small dip. It was the market drastically reassessing the risks here, the reality of the supply crunch.
Wow. And it wasn't just Nvidia.
No, not at all. AI, software stocks, more broadly, the companies building the applications and services on top of AI infrastructure, they've shed tens of billions too. There's this widespread fear about the disruption, the realization that the hardware bottleneck is holding back the whole sector.
Because if you can't get the compute, you can't run the software.
Exactly. These companies need scalable compute to deliver their services. If it's scarce or way too expensive, their growth plans just fall apart. And if you project these losses forward thinking about delayed projects, inflated costs, the total hit to investors could realistically reach into the hundreds of billions over the next few months.
Hundreds of billions.
Yeah. And it's not just the big players losing value on paper. The ripple effect hits the whole ecosystem. We're already seeing smaller companies, agile startups that really depend on affordable, accessible compute. They're folding. They just can't compete for the scarce resources or handle the inflated costs. Valuations are being reset everywhere. It's a pretty stark reminder that even in the hottest, fastest-growing tech sectors, basic supply chain problems can bring everything screeching to a halt, with huge financial pain for everyone involved, from VCs down to individual investors.
Okay, so this aggressive stance from the Trump administration, clearly aimed at boosting the U.S. tech position, it hasn't exactly been universally popular back home, has it?
No, definitely not. It's drawing sharp criticism, according to our sources, from some pretty powerful voices.
Like who?
Well, not just academics. We're talking key political figures, particularly Senate Democrats, but also industry leaders themselves, people within the tech sector.
And what are they saying? What's the criticism?
They're not just arguing against tariffs in general. They're raising alarms about the strategic impact of this escalating chip war.
Expert, what's the bigger game here, politically and economically? Are there different viewpoints coming through in the sources?
Yeah, that's a really crucial point, and the sources do paint a picture with uh, quite a bit of nuance regarding the domestic criticism. The warnings from these critics are pretty clear. They're arguing that this constant tit for tat, these trade actions and counteractions, could actually end up handing advantages to Chinese firms like Huawei.
How? That seems counterintuitive.
Well, the concern is this. By creating such big problems for U.S. companies, making it hard to get parts, hard to sell into key markets, you basically force both sides to double down on becoming self-sufficient. For China, it could mean they push even harder and faster to build up their own chip-making abilities, their own domestic supply chain.
Right, so they become less reliant on the U.S.
Exactly. Which could lead to this split in the global tech world, a bifurcation where China operates more independently. And that actually reduces U.S. leverage in the future.
Okay, I see. And the impact on the U.S. side.
The argument is this could erode American competitiveness in the long run. If U.S. companies are held back by component shortages or super high costs, it makes it harder for them to innovate, harder to compete globally. And that ultimately helps their foreign rivals.
So the short-term pain might lead to long-term disadvantage.
That's the concern being raised, that while these protectionist moves aim to hobble a competitor now, the long-term effect might be to isolate American companies, encourage self-reliance elsewhere, and ultimately weaken the U.S. leadership position in global tech. For example, if U.S. AI firms can't scale because they lack GPUs, while Chinese firms, even if initially slowed, eventually build their own supply chains, well, the competitive balance could shift down the road.
And politically, how does this play out?
Well, politically, it puts President Trump in a precarious position, as our sources describe it. As the economic fallout keeps growing, rising costs, project delays, those huge investor losses, and these negotiations with China are apparently quite tense, teetering on the edge heading into the fall. This domestic criticism adds another layer of difficulty.
Pressure from inside as well as outside.
Exactly. The administration has to balance its stated goals, national security, tech decoupling with the very real, immediate economic pain being felt by U.S. companies and investors. It's not just trade policy anymore. It's all tangled up with national security, economic health, international relations. The core question the critics are asking is, are the short-term gains from these aggressive measures worth the risk of potentially losing America's long-term tech leadership? It's a debate about whether the benefits of decoupling outweigh the risks of splitting the global tech world and maybe even boosting rivals' efforts to catch up.
Wow. Yeah, what a journey just listening to this unfold. We started with something really specific, didn't we? A GPU shortage at one company, OpenAI. And we've seen how that's just one tiny symptom of this much bigger, way more complex geopolitical storm with huge economic consequences for the whole AI field. It really drives home the main point from this deep dive, I think. Just how deeply connected everything is. Global politics, the nitty-gritty of supply chains, and the incredible speed of tech progress. Every decision, every tariff, every countermove on that global stage sends ripples out immediately. Ripples that can either fuel innovation or, well, choke it off.
And this raises an important question
Yeah.
for you, the listener, right?
Yes.
About how interconnected our world really is now. Think about it, whether it's the future price of AI services you might use daily, or the speed of medical advances that could affect your health, or how fast we solve big scientific problems, or even just the stability of the global economy.
Yeah.
These decisions made seemingly far away can have direct, tangible effects on our lives and on the future we're building.
Yeah.
This chip war of 2025, it's not just a news headline. It's happening now. It's evolving. And it really highlights how fragile progress can be when the world depends on these intricate global connections. It makes you think about the unintended consequences, even if policies made with good intentions, and just how delicate the balancing act is in this globalized tech landscape.
So, as you mull all this over after our deep dive today, here's maybe a final provocative thought to chew on. In a world where intelligence, where innovation is becoming so digital, what really defines a nation's power anymore? Is it the ideas, the intellectual property? Is it the factories, the ability to actually make things? Or is it controlling the raw materials, the fundamental building blocks that the entire future is being built upon?